Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are going to try to do the impossible. Find potential candidates for the San Francisco 49ers to replace Nick Bosa. It's a big job to do. In fact, it may be impossible to get done. You don't find guys that can walk into your room mid-season, early season, off the street via trade that can be and produce like Nick Bosa. He's one of the best defensive players in all of football, probably a top 3, top 4 edge rusher. He's among the elites at his position. And today, though, I want to give it my darndest, my best, to find 5 potential trade candidates to replace Nick Bosa. We're going to scour the entire trade market. We're going to go from the elite guys to some depth guys. We're going to leave no stone unturned trying to find this Niners defense some help after learning of Nick Bosa's season-ending injury. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let's dive into an impossible task of replacing Nick Bosa. And I want to start things off with discussing probably the favorite of many fans, probably the one player that everybody, whether you're a Niner fan, an NFL fan, a football fan, that you say, hey, this makes the most sense. That being Bengals edge rusher, their elite edge rusher, I might add, Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson is in that category, probably more of a B or A minus tier edge rusher compared to Bosa, who's an A plus elite level tier guy. 17 and a half sacks back-to-back years. He is a star, a player that I think the Niners will indeed look to at least give the Bengals a call about and see what they're feeling, what they're thinking. But I do want to kind of dampen the expectations. Well, I do think San Francisco, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, they always call. They'll always see what's out there. And if the Bengals are willing to play some ball and maybe are open to taking a lesser offer for Hendrickson, then it's certainly on the table. There's no doubt in my mind San Francisco would love to have Trey Hendrickson for the rest of his one-year contract. Why wouldn't you do that, right? You're getting potentially the best edge rusher on the market in regards to being able to acquire them via trade. Like, you just don't add guys like Hendrickson middle of the season. And if San Francisco could do that, it's a game changer, and it definitely lessens the blow, probably the most of anybody you can add at the trade deadline or before it, to help this roster hopefully go to a Super Bowl or have a deep playoff run in 2025. That said, though, the Bengals, for as bad as they were week 3 against the Vikings, are still 2-1. They are in and atop the AFC North, and how long that lasts, I don't know. Things can change very quickly. But they believe, although I do think it is somewhat misguided, that if they can just hold the fort down, be average, be 8-8, be around 500, maybe Joe Burrow comes back for a playoff run or kind of a late season push. Again, I think it's a little bit misguided for them to believe that. But right now, they are 2-1. Right now, the odds of that are so slim that I don't think the Bengals are going to want to play ball. Now, you can say, well, Sterling, if they're under 500, you can see the Bengals saying, hey, we don't want to pay Trey Hendrickson big money, hit a long holdout during the offseason. Why not get something for him while you can? Why not save, about half of his $20-ish million contract this year, whatever the number may be? It's pretty high. Save some money off of that. Maybe put that into the offensive line next year to protect Joe Burrow if you are Cincinnati. But they're a cheap ownership group out there with the Bengals. They don't like to spend money, so trading him could make logical sense for Cincinnati. However, what's the asking price, right? We can't forget a large part of the reason San Francisco was able to acquire Bryce Huff, who has been so good through 3 games, is because Philadelphia was willing to eat a large chunk of the contract, half of it or close to it, I believe. Are the Bengals going to want to take half the money, pay half the contract for Trey Hendrickson to play elsewhere? The odds of that are really, really slim, to a point where they can say, let's say the asking price for Hendrickson is a first-round pick. Or maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's a second-round pick and a third-round pick, kind of what the Rams traded away for Von Miller in 2021 when they won their Super Bowl. Maybe that's the asking price. Would San Francisco do that? Would San Francisco, after having a very long offseason of cutting cost, cutting veteran defensive players, letting big name guys leave, not re-signing some of their own free agents, redoing some contracts, extending guys to help alleviate the cap situation like Brock Purdy, like Fred Warner, like George Kittle, would they then take on Hendrickson's contract? But also, the more important part here is, would they then trade a second and third round pick? Now you can say again, Sterling, they can get Hendrickson for a second and third round pick, maximize themselves this year. Hopefully Bosa comes back in 2026, healthy, ready to go by week 1, and they're all good. And then when Hendrickson leaves in the offseason, they can recoup that third round draft pick. But let me ask you this. Without knowing where San Francisco will be around the November trade deadline, around week 9, week 10, if San Francisco, let's say, is 5-3, say they are 6-3, whatever they are, is that going to be enough for the Jed York, Parag Marate, penny pinching front office to say, yeah, mortgage some of your future, which is kind of why San Francisco was already in the mess they were, trading away 3 first-round draft picks, some failures of draft picks, mainly Jake Moody and Cam Latu in the third round in 2022-23. Like, do you want to risk that again? Do you want to put yourself in a position to, as you are trying to rebuild your roster, get younger, insulate your rooms, add some depth, and hopefully reopen your window for a Super Bowl, is that worth risking going all in for one season? Maybe to you it is. I can see justifying that. You haven't had a Super Bowl in over 30 years. This fan base is restless. They've lost 3 Super Bowls in about 15 years. They want to get the big one. And if Hendrickson gets you closer to that, then okay. I can see them justifying it. There's logical sense being made. I just don't think the Bengals would do that. Not now in week 4 of the NFL season after week 3. And I don't think even then would they risk or want to pay Hendrickson to play elsewhere when they didn't even want to pay him to play for them. And you can honestly argue, now that Joe Burrow was out, if they need anything, it's defense to help carry the load with how bad the offensive line is. Without Joe Burrow, how do you mitigate a middling quarterback player, bad quarterback play? A good defense. So I don't even know if Hendrickson's on the market. Thus, I want to give you 5 other candidates that I think San Francisco could target, should target, all along the spectrum. And the first one here is Miami Dolphins edge rusher Jaelan Phillips. Now, like Hendrickson, the Jaelan Phillips thought of a trade. It's not going to cost you as much, first off, maybe a 4th-round pick, maybe a 3rd-round pick at most. I don't think that's going to happen. He's a free agent after this season. And the most important part is the Dolphins suck. They're 0-3. Mike McDaniel might get fired. That regime's in trouble. They had a players-only meeting after week 1. You can say, well, Sterling, they had an admirable game against the Bills. They're still 0-3. They're in trouble. As the winter months come, they get worse. They're not a team that I believe is going to be in the running for anything at the end of the year. Tua Tagovailoa has one of the worst contracts in football, thus me leading to maybe Jaelan Phillips will be on the market via trade. Maybe if they fired McDaniel, the front office says, hey, head coach is gone, free agent after the season, let's capitalize on Phillips' market, get a draft pick in return, it may be 2, who knows, and try to capitalize on the odds of him leaving in the offseason for elsewhere. Probably not for a big contract, but I think in the meantime, Phillips fits San Francisco's defense. And this season, he has 9 pressures, a 19.2% pass rush win rate. I think that will be 2nd on the team now that Bosa's out, just behind Bryce Huff. There is some concerns in regards to his run defense. Only a 56.6 PFF run defense grade. That's not great, but Mike Williams can play the edge rusher spot on base downs, and then Phillips comes in on third downs. Or you can kind of mix and match Huff and Phillips, and you can kind of put things together as kind of a rotation to help mitigate or kind of alleviate the pressure off young guys in the room. He has 4 run stops this year, and when he's fully healthy, he had 10 sacks in 2021 and 2022. There is some pass rush productivity in a player like Miami Dolphins edge rusher Jaelan Phillips. However, there was one really big drawback with a player like Jaelan Phillips. Everybody wants to complain about, oh, Bosa's always hurt. This team has so many injuries. And while that, to a certain degree, is very, very true, Jaelan Phillips would very much in the same category because he tore his Achilles in 2023 and is coming off a torn ACL last season. Now, it's 1 year of him, which you already played 3 games. Can he make it through the next 15 weeks or so? The odds would say yes, and maybe for a 1 year, the price wouldn't be too high. I'm thinking a 4th-round pick at most, a 3rd-round pick, which that even might be too high. There really is no, long-term contractual effects of acquiring a player like Phillips. There are some drawbacks. You're not going to get good run defense. There's injury history there, but I do think Jaelan Phillips will be amongst San Francisco's top targets if they do indeed decide to make a big splash or make a trade near the trade deadline. And I think Phillips might be one of the better pure pass rushers on the trade market if the Dolphins continue their trend of being a really, really bad football team this year. The next guy I think San Francisco could target, and this is more dipping into the Robert Saleh well. Now, we don't know how long Robert Saleh will be in San Francisco as the defensive coordinator. It could be for 2 years. It can be for 5 years. The odds are it's not going to be for too long. Thus, without Nick Bosa, you are putting faith in Saleh to put things together and hopefully make the loss not as big. But also, now that you have Robert Saleh in your building, that's a guy who was with the Jets the past couple of years as their head coach, had a lot of draft picks, most of those guys being on defense, and knows defensive linemen out there in New York really, really well. Now, the Jets aren't a good football team. It's a new regime out there in the Big Apple. Could they be a team that, let's say, if they continue to be bad towards the trade deadline, says, hey, Aaron Glenn, new regime, we can change things up. We can trade guys away. We can trade, former first-round picks away. Why would they not entertain the idea of trading for, this being San Francisco, trading for New York Jets former first-round pick, Jermaine Johnson? Now, again, there's reasons to say I don't love this, but also I can tell you right now, he's under contract from this season all the way through 2026 via a 5th-year option of his contract that was picked up by New York during the offseason. He also has 6 pressures, a 17.4% pass rush win rate, and a 61.4 run defense grade. So a little less pass rush productivity compared to Jaelan Phillips, but a much better run defender. Saleh knows him. But like Phillips, there is some injury concerns. He's coming off of a torn Achilles that was suffered last year, but he's healthy now. Can you find the same productivity? Maybe not, but when he was healthy in 2023, he had 9 sacks. I don't see why San Francisco wouldn't entertain the idea of kind of dipping their toes back into the Robert Saleh well and say, hey, Saleh, you know this guy, you like this guy, you picked him in the first round. Do you think he can fit in this defense? I think San Francisco might be smart there. And don't forget, Bryce Huff has a $17 million option kind of for next year. At least San Francisco can decide to cut him or trade him. It's a big cap hit for him. And I love Bryce Huff. I would love to bring him back. But if you don't want to entertain that, Chris Matos will be gone after next year. There's some questions on the defensive line. And if you can get somebody in your room that the defensive coordinator knows well, has had success in his defense, and can help you now and into the future, that being 2026, that seems like a good deal for me. Now, he'd probably be more expensive than Phillips simply because there is some long-term contractual agreements there between Johnson and the Jets, him being under contract for the next 2 years. But again, even if it cost you a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick, why wouldn't you make that deal? It's a risk worth taking. The only thing I would not do if I was San Francisco, I would not reach up into the first round and trade first round picks, and I'd be really reluctant to trade away second round draft picks. But third round draft picks, compensation picks come and go. Those are kind of free picks, if you will. And if San Francisco is going to be good anyways, which I think you and I feel like they're 3-0, there's a good chance they can be good at the end of the year. The easiest schedule in football, I might add, then trading away a third round pick at the end of the round anyways really isn't that big of a deal to lose. Jermaine Johnson, I think, could be a player that San Francisco targets. I think it makes some sense. Again, maybe a third and fifth round draft pick. San Francisco has plenty of draft picks to play with. If guys get paid like Gross Matos and more guys along that kind of archetype, they'll be fine, and they'll be in a good spot. Again, third round picks are essentially free in the NFL. It's only when you're reaching up towards round 2 and 1 that it becomes a problem for me and it becomes too rich. But a third round pick and a fifth round pick for Jermaine Johnson, I'd love that. He knows Saleh. He's been good in the defense before and is having a really good first 3 games, 6 pressures, a 17.4% pass rush win rate, and can give you something on run defense, which could lead him to being a base down player for you or supplementing a guy like Bryce Huff, which I think they played together in 2023. So maybe there is some chemistry there with those two guys, reunite them, and maybe give you a big boost to begin or kind of carry you through the 2025 season without Nick Bosa. Now I want to dip my toes into the maybe underrated guys, not starters, not guys you would trust to maybe be your next Nick Bosa or stick around for more than 1-2 years, guys that are probably going to come a lot cheaper for you to acquire, guys you would make in a rotation where right now San Francisco, their starting defensive line will probably be Bryce Huff, Kalia Davis, Jordan Elliott, Micah Williams, and then Samuel Kawani mixed in on third downs. That team makes the most sense for what the Niners are going to do to replace Bosa. But if you want some more, kind of edge rushing rotational depth in your room to kind of raise the floor, but not the ceiling, I think San Francisco might be smart to target a player like edge rusher from the Browns, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, a former first-round pick in 2021. Again, not going to start. He's a depth guy, deep in their rotation. Not the best run defender, a 56.8 career run defense grade when he was in Tampa Bay. He's played very little in Cleveland. He's kind of buried on that great defense's depth chart. Might be a 7th round pick to trade, a 6th round pick to trade to acquire him. Really cheap out there on the market. He also is transitioning from that 3-4 outside linebacker spot in Tampa Bay to having his hand to the ground in a 4-3 defense in Cleveland. If there is someone that can get the best out of guys like that, it is Robert Saleh. So far this year, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has a 14.3% pass rush win rate. That is best for, I believe, the 3rd amongst the edge rushing talent on San Francisco. So Bryce Huff, no Nick Bosa, Yetur Gross-Matos, then it would be Tryon-Shoyinka. So maybe some depth there, but a really cheap option as San Francisco says, hey, we can't afford to go get guys like Hendrickson or Phillips or Johnson. Let's improve the floor, not the ceiling, but insulate ourselves somewhat in case somebody else goes down, or kind of hope they can get more out of him than Cleveland is currently doing with the very, very small sample size he has played with the Browns this year. The next guy I think San Francisco will be very smart to look at to acquire via trade is Panthers edge rusher D.J. Wonnum. Now, a couple of years ago, I was very high on Wonnum. He played for the Vikings. He was a free agent. I said, hey, San Francisco, you want some depth? You want to find your next Arden Key if you can, and guy that can kind of do it all for you. He isn't a great player, but he's a good guy to have in the room. I thought Wonnum would have made sense as a free agent target for San Francisco 2 years ago. But now, with Bosa out, like Shoyinka, you may want to add some depth to that room. The Panthers are 1-2. They're not very good, but we'll see how things go. And if they continue to not be great, I can see the Panthers, maybe another regime change happens, or they say, hey, let's sell on impending free agents. Wonnum is that, only signed through 2025, like Tryon-Shoyinka is, and like Phillips is, but he has 3 void years on his contract. We have seen San Francisco in previous seasons get guys like this, erase the void years, re-sign them to a 2 or 3 year contract, and help make him cheaper on the back end of their deals. I can see San Francisco valuing that from a contractual standpoint, but on the field, Wonnum has been a player that has gotten 5+ sacks each of his last 3 full seasons. Now, you may ask yourself, why is there that specificity? Why his last 3 full seasons? Because in his first year with the Panthers, he tore his quad. But he's back now, he's fully healthy, and in previous years, he's had 9 and 8 sack seasons with the Vikings. That is a guy you buy low on, but can help you down the road in the season. Since 2022, kind of his breakout year in Minnesota, he has a 60.2 run defense grade. So not great, but not terrible. A lot better than what San Francisco has now in that room, which the unit's been great, but the grading level, Wonnum would be one of the better guys in the room right now. And since 2022, he has a 9.8% pass rush win rate. However, to give you more context to that, this year with the Panthers, who are not a great defense, no matter how good the Falcons made them look, not a great defense, his pass rush win rate is 12.2%. That would be third on San Francisco behind Bryce Huff and Yetur Gross-Matos. So I do think there is some more juice in DJ Wonnum than the numbers may indicate for his career, because right now he's playing a really good football for a bad team. Get it in San Francisco with Saleh, with the guys in that room, you may find yourself with a much better version of Wonnum than you're currently getting from, or that the Panthers are getting out there in Carolina. I think that is another option for San Francisco. That's 4 guys: Jaelan Phillips, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Jermaine Johnson, and DJ Wonnum. Of those 4, which one would you want? Tell me down below, because I think I have the solution next. The final guy, the 5th guy, if you follow us on social media, you will know this man very well. In fact, even today, when talking to the media, he said, sometimes you got to stay faithful. And I said, interesting. Is that subliminal messaging? Obviously it wasn't, but you know my motto here. At the end of every show we say, until next time, stay faithful. I said, oh, he's talking to me. He is speaking through the camera lens all the way out there in New York City, and he's saying, stay faithful, Sterling. This is a deal that could come to fruition, and that player is New York Giants edge rusher Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, to kind of clear the air here first, Kayvon Thibodeaux has had previous examples of some character concerns, not off the field, but there's been some effort issues. There's been some complaints. I will chalk that up to playing on really bad teams, being really young, trying to be a first-round pick from 2022 with a couple of regime changes, I believe 2, if not 3 defensive coordinator changes. That's a lot of stress on a young player. You're in New York. The media is beating down on you. You're in San Francisco. While, yes, the expectations are high, the media is not like New York media. You can kind of hide behind guys like Bryce Huff, like George Kittle, like Purdy. You would not be the former first-round draft pick, Kayvon Thibodeaux. You'd be a guy brought in to help the room as a collective, not you have to be the guy. I think that would certainly help Kayvon in his mentals, in his mindset, and hopefully get better play out of him. With that said, he can play inside, he can play outside. He was a dog at Oregon, and there has been glimpses of a really special player, an elite level player in New York. There just hasn't been that consistency. But when you look at this year, when now the Giants have Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeaux, albeit is playing a ton of snaps for New York, the Giants aren't a good football team. They're 0-3, and then in the next 5 weeks, they play the Chargers, the Broncos, the Saints, but the Eagles 2 times, and now they're going to start rookie quarterback Jackson Dart. The odds are they may be winless by the trade deadline. And in that case, you can see if Brian Daboll gets fired, somebody gets promoted, the regime gets restless. Okay, Kayvon Thibodeaux, you are a kind of a remnant of a previous regime. We can get a third-round pick for you. We can get a handful of picks for you. Maybe a second-round pick for Kayvon Thibodeaux. Who knows? That could be a guy the Giants entertain trading at the trade deadline and say, hey, we have Abdul Carter. We're paying Brian Burns a ton of money. We prefer to not pay 3 edge rushers good money or have 3 guys sharing the room. If we can get a 3rd round pick and a 4th round pick and a 5th round pick, whatever the price tag may be, and help insulate ourselves, get better offensive linemen, more receivers for Dart, that to me feels like a direction the Giants could take and probably should take as they enter into a new era with the team, which could lead to, again, a head coaching fire, a GM being fired, and more things happening out there in New York. I can see the Giants saying, hey, Thibodeaux, you got to go. And the Niners should pounce on this if they get the opportunity. Guys like this do not become available very often. Now, again, Hendrickson is the elite level guy. Thibodeaux is the very next tier where he could grow into an elite level guy with more consistency and room to grow, playing on grass in San Francisco with, again, Robert Saleh, Fred Warner, and D. Winters behind him, and a really good head on the shoulders of the regime out here. There is no threat of turnover. There is no threat of firings. It is simply just, let's go play some football, put your head down and play. Whereas in New York, it's not really been that. But what is he doing this year? This year, he has 2 sacks. He'll be tied for the lead on the 49ers. He has 5 run stops. He has 12 pressures. I think that will be tied for the lead as well amongst the edge rushers in San Francisco. He has a 12.5% pass rush win rate. And here's the important part. You want to talk about, and this is the big loss no one's talking about. You want to hopefully keep Michael having the ability to move inside on 3rd downs. And I like Samuel Wonnum. I think he's a fine player, but he's not somebody you want to play consistently. He's a good player, but I think as soon as you have depth guys become starters, they either rise to the occasion or they get exploited for what they truly are. A good player as a rotational guy. I think Samo is the latter of that grouping. Thibodeaux, though, has a 77.5 run defense grade per PFF. He can be a 3-down player for you. He's playing the 2nd most defensive snaps for a defensive lineman in football this year behind his counterpart, Brian Burns. There is reasons to want to get a player like Kayvon Thibodeaux, a former 1st-round draft pick who's under contract through 2026 via his 5th-year option. I think San Francisco, if they were to look to find a guy and maybe can't meet the asking price of the Bengals, Kayvon Thibodeaux should be the guy. He's focused. He wants to win. You get him in San Francisco. Imagine going from an 0-3 team to a 3-0 team. Your mindset changes. You're happier. You may relax somewhat, but also you get around guys that want to win that can motivate you. Things can change. Or you can become Chase Young and jog to run defense plays and not really get the best effort. I don't think San Francisco would do that. I think Kayvon Thibodeaux would come in San Francisco. You'd see the exact same effort he's giving you now with the Giants, who he's playing great football. He's playing like his head's on fire. He's a good run defender, if not a great run defender off the edge. You can also play inside. You can move him around. You can keep that rotation you have with Michael, with Bryce Huff on base downs, and it will help keep your defense intact. Where now you're asking guys to move around, play up to maybe the starting level, which guys aren't ready to yet. And if you're asking me, I'd really want Bryce Huff to stay as a third down pass rushing specialist. I don't want Bryce Huff playing every single down. That's when guys get exposed. That's when guys get hurt. That is when really good things turn into average production. I think San Francisco should be all in trying to get Kayvon Thibodeaux. In fact, I would trade that second round pick for Kayvon Thibodeaux under contract for 2 more years this season and next year. If Bosa does miss more time into next year, you have him on the roster. There's no concerns as to who's the other guy opposite Michael, who's the other guy opposite Bryce Huff. If Bryce Huff falters late in the season and you don't want to pay him that March 15th roster bonus, you can move off of him. It just gives you so much more flexibility and really keeps your window open for 2025, while also kind of keeping it open again for 2026. So tell me down below what you think. Which one of those 5 edge rushers would you want? Kayvon Thibodeaux, that's my pick of the New York Giants. Jaelan Phillips of the Miami Dolphins. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka from the Browns. D.J. Wonnum from the Panthers, and Jermaine Johnson from the Jets. Of those 5, who would you want? Or are you saying, Sterling, knock it off, stop it? We are getting Trey Hendrickson. Drop your comments down below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And don't forget this, Nick Bosa, his injury, albeit it sucks, it stinks, it has given San Francisco $7 extra million in cap space to play with. So they can fit more guys under the cap than they could on Saturday. They do have some more room to play with financially, so maybe having a guy on the contract for 2 years really isn't that big of a contractual disagreement, if you will, or a dispute issue, if you will, that it seems to be. I do think San Francisco should jump at the opportunity. Get Kayvon Thibodeaux. He will fit this defense very well, but tell me down below who your choice is. Is there somebody I didn't mention that you think San Francisco should target? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. And as Kayvon Thibodeaux said himself, until next time, stay faithful.